Greetings to all. A warm welcome to all of you. Enjoy with me a new study of holiness. And today it is holiness and redemption that I want to share with you. This is your Pastor Yeti. Consecrate to me all the firstborn. Exodus 13, verse 2. All the firstborn are mine. On the day that I struck all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, I sanctified to myself all the firstborn in Israel. For all the firstborn among the children of Israel are mine. I am the Lord. Numbers chapter 3 verse 13 and chapter 8 verse 17. For I am the Lord who bring you up out of the land of Egypt to be your God. You shall therefore be holy, for I am holy. Leviticus 11:45. I have redeemed you. You are mine. Isaiah 43 verse 1. At Horeb, we saw how the first mention of the word holy in the history of fallen man was connected with the inauguration of a new period in the revelation of God, that of redemption. In the Passover, we have the first manifestation of what redemption is. And here, the more frequent use of the word holy begins. In the Feast of the Unleavened Bread, we have the symbol of the putting off of the old and the putting on of the new, to which redemption through blood is to lead. Of the 7 days we read, on the first day there shall be a holy convocation, and on the 7th day there shall be a holy convocation. Exodus 12:16. The meeting of the redeemed people to commemorate its deliverance. It's a holy gathering. And they meet under the covering of their Redeemer, the Holy One. As soon as the people had been redeemed from Egypt, God's very first word to them was, consecrate, make holy to me all the firstborn, it is mine. And see Exodus 13, it's the Old Testament, verse 2. The word reveals how ownership is one of the central thoughts both in redemption and in sanctification. The link that binds them together. And though the word is here only used of the firstborn, they are regarded as a type of the whole people. We know how all growth and organization commence from a center, aren't which in every widening circles the life of the organism spreads. If holiness in the human race is to be true and real, free as that of God, it must be the result of a self-appropriating development. And so, the firstborn are sanctified, and afterwards the priests in their place, as the firstborn are sanctified, and afterwards the priest. As a type of what the whole people is to be as God's firstborn among the nation. His peculiar treasure, a holy nation, and this idea of ownership as related to redemption and sanctification comes out with special clearness when God speaks of the unchange of the priests for the firstborn. In the Old Testament, look for the book Numbers chapter 3, 12 to 13, chapter 8, 16 to 17. They, the Levites, are wholly given to me. Instead of the firstborn, I have taken them for myself, for all the firstborn are mine. On the day that I struck all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, I sanctified them to myself. Let us try to realize the relationships existing between redemption and holiness. In paradise, we saw what God's sanctifying the seventh day was. He took possession of it. He blessed it. He rested in it and refreshed himself. Where God enters and rests, there is holiness, and the more perfectly the object is fitting for him to enter and dwell, the more perfect the holiness. The seventh day was sanctified as a period for man's sanctification. At the very first step, God took to lead him to holiness. The command not to eat of the tree, man fell. God did not give up on his plan, but had now to pursue a different and slower path. After 25 centuries, slow but necessary preparation, he now reveals himself as the Redeemer, a people whom he had chosen and formed for himself. He gives up the oppression and slavery so that their hearts may be prepared to long for and welcome a deliverer. In a series of mighty wonders, he proves himself the conqueror of their enemies, and then, in the blood of the Paschal Lamb on their doors, teaches them what redemption is, and not only from an unjust oppressor here on earth, but from the righteous judgment their sins had deserved. The Passover is to be to them the transition for the seen and temporal to the unseen and spiritual, revealing God not only as the mighty, but as the Holy One, freeing them not only from the house of bondage, but to destroying angle. And it's not angle, it's the angel, excuse me. And having redeemed them this way, he tells them that they are now his own. During their stay at Sinai and in the wilderness, the thoughts is continually pressed upon them that they are now the Lord's people, whom he has made his own by the strength of his arm, so that he may make them holy for himself, even as he is holy. The purpose of redemption is possession, and the purpose of possession is likeness to him who is Redeemer and owner, is holiness. In regards to this holiness and the way it is to be attained as a result of redemption, there is more than one lesson to sanctifying of the firstborn will teach us. First of all, we want to realize how inseparable redemption and holiness are. Neither can exist without the other. Only redemption leads to holiness. If I am seeking holiness, I must abide in the clear and full experience of being a redeemed one, and as such of being owned and possessed by God. Redemption is too often looked at first from its negative side as deliverance from, but it's really glory, the positive element of being redeemed to himself. Full possession of a house means occupation. If I own a house without occupying it, it may be the home of all that is foul and evil. And I'm not mean fool, but F-O-U-L. God has redeemed me and made me his own with the view of getting complete possession of me and you. He says of my soul and your soul, it is mine, and seeks to have his right of ownership acknowledged and made fully manifest. That will be perfect holiness, where God has entered in and taken complete and entire possession. It is redemption that gives God his right and power over me and you. It is redemption realized in filling my soul and your soul that will bring me and you the assurance of experience of all his power will work in me and in you. In God, redemption and sanctification are one. So the more redemption as a divine reality possesses me and you, the closer I am linked and you to the Redeemer God, the Holy One. And just so, holiness brings the assurance and enjoyment of redemption. If I am seeking to hold firmly redemption on lower ground, I may be deceived. If I have become unwatchful or careless, I should tremble at the very idea of trusting in redemption apart from holiness as its object. To Israel, God spoke, I brought you up out of the land of Egypt. You shall therefore be holy, for I am holy. It is God the Redeemer who made us his own, who called us to be holy. So let holiness be to us the most essential, the most precious part of redemption, the yielding of ourselves to him who takes us as his own and has undertaken to make us his own entirely. A second lesson suggested is the connection between God's and man's working in sanctification. To Moses the Lord speaks, consecrate to me all the firstborn. He afterwards says, I sanctify all the firstborn myself. What God does, he does to be carried out and appropriate through us. When he tells us that we are made holy in Christ Jesus, that we are his holy ones, he speaks not only of his purpose, but of what he has really done. You see, this is not your work. It is God who did it. So, he speaks not only of his purpose, I repeat it, but of what he has really done. We have been sanctified in the one offering of Christ, and in our being created anew in him. But this work has a human side. To us comes the call to be holy, to follow after holiness, to perfect holiness. God has made us his own and allows us to say that we are his. He waits for us now to yield him and enlarged entrance into the secret places of our inner being, for him to fill it all with His fullness. Holiness is not something we bring to God or to do for Him. Holiness is what there is of God in us. God has made us His own in redemption so that He might make Himself our own in sanctification. And our work in becoming holy is the bringing our whole life and every part of it. So, saying it in one word, complete. Surrender. There's two words. But remember, surrender. And our work in becoming holy is to bringing our whole life and every part of it into the subjection to the rule of His holy God, of this holy God, putting every member and every power upon His altar. And remember that Paul writes in his letter to be that living sacrifice. It is you that God is longing for. Christ did the complete sacrifice. And we can honor God. We can open ourselves completely of everything that we are to Him. Like I said, holiness is not something we bring to God or to do for Him. Holiness is what there is of God in us. And so, as we do the complete surrender, it's a living sacrifice in everything we are living our lives. We'll make the completion of that holiness. And our work in becoming holy is to bringing our whole life into subjection to the rule of the holy God, putting every member and every power. And this teaches us the answer to the question as to the connection between the sudden and the gradual in sanctification, between its being and thing once and for all complete, and yet imperfect and needing to be perfect. What God sanctifies is holy with a divine and perfect holiness as His gift. But human has to sanctify by acknowledging and maintaining and carrying out that holiness in relation to what God has made holy. God sanctified the Sabbath day, but humanity has to sanctify it, and that is, to keep it holy. God has sanctified us in Jesus Christ, and we are to be holy by yielding ourselves to the power of that holiness, by acting it out and manifesting it in all our life and walk. The objective divine gift, bestowed once for all and completely, must be appropriated as a subjective, personal possession. We must cleanse ourselves, perfecting holiness, redeemed to holiness, as the two thoughts are linked in the mind and work of God. They must be linked in our heart and life. When Isaiah announced the true redemption, it was given to him even more clearly and fully than to Moses, to reveal the name of God as your Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel. Isaiah 48 verse 17. The more we study this name, hallow it, and worship God by it, the more inseparable will the words become connected, and we shall see how. As the Redeemer is the Holy One, the redeemed are holy ones too. Isaiah says of the highway of holiness, the redeemed shall walk there. Isaiah 35, 8 and 9. The redemption that comes out from the holiness of God must lead up into it too. We shall understand to be redeemed in Christ is to be holy in Christ, and the call of our redeemed God will acquire new meaning. I am holy, you be holy. Pray with me. O holy God, precious Holy One of Israel and his Redeemer, I worship before you in deep humility. I confess with shame that I so long saw you more as the Redeemer than as the Holy One. I did not know that it was as the Holy One you had redeemed, that redemption was the outcome and the fruit of your holiness, that the participation in your holiness was its one purpose and its highest beauty. I only thought of being redeemed from bondage and death. Like Israel, I did not understand that without fellowship and conformity to yourself, redemption would lose its value. Most holy God, I praise you for the patience with which you bear with the selfishness and the slowness of your redeemed ones. I praise you for the teaching of the Spirit of your holiness, leading your saints and me too, to see how it is your holiness and the call to become partaker of it that gives redemption its value, and how it is for yourself as the Holy One to be your own, possessed and sanctified of you, that we are redeemed. O my God, with the love and joy and the thanksgiving that cannot be uttered, I praise you for Christ, who has been made for us by you sanctification and redemption. In him you are my Redeemer, my Holy One. In him I am your redeemed, your Holy One, O God. In speechless adoration I fall down to worship the love that passes understanding, that has done this for us, and to believe that in one who is now before you, holy in Christ, you will fulfill all your glorious purposes according to the greatness of your power. Amen. Let me give you some further thoughts. In what heart attitude should you think or pray for holiness? Redemption through his blood, the blood we meet at the threshold of the pathway of holiness. For it is the blood of the sacrifice that the fire of God consumed and yet could not consume. That blood has such power of holiness in it that we read, sanctified by his own blood. Always think of holiness or pray for it as one redeemed by blood. Live under the covering of the blood in its daily cleansing power. How can you rightly approach God's holiness and righteous judgment if you hope to be holy? It is only, as we know, the holiness of God is fire, and how before his righteous judgment that we can appreciate the preciousness of the blood or the reality of the redemption. As long as we only think of the love of God as goodness, we may aim at being good. Faith in God who redeems will awaken in us the need and the joy of being holy in Christ. Have you understood the right of the property God has in what He has redeemed? Have you heard a voice say, "You are mine"? Has God very humble to speak it to you? And listen very gentle for it. The holiness of the creature has its origin in the divine will, in the divine election, redemption and possession. And give yourself up to this will of God and rejoice in it. As God created, so He redeemed, to sanctify. Have great faith in Him for this. Let God have the entire possession and disposal of you. Holiness is His. Our holiness is to let Him, the Holy One, be all. May God bless your heart. And may He fill the desire as He has, a complete desire to give it all. And He did through Christ. So open yourself to receive. And this is a life. This is not a standing still and just waiting till it happens. Walk your life in Christ, and you will see that as more that you are giving yourself as a living sacrifice, to give all the glory, to give all the honor, to give all the worship, to give all the things to Him. You will be amazed that it will surpass His understanding what God has given you. Blessings, my beloved people. This is your Pastor Yeti. Bye.